Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to Star Trek Helix, Episode 2, The City in the Trees. One of the Lormeans started approaching Commander Quentin Locke. "I'm Captain Thema," she gestured toward the crashed ship. "The scientists you are looking for are safe. They are in our capital city, which we call Lorm." She gestured back toward the flyers. "Come with us, and we will take you to them." Quentin took half a step back and reached toward his phaser for a second. As he did so, the weapons that had been being lowered were re-aimed at his chest. It was really quite clear that although the Lormean was talking and being polite with them, the guards, for lack of a better term, were still prepared for hostilities. "Please, don't let this devolve into violence. Just come with us and meet the missing scientists you are looking for," Captain Thema said. "How do you know we're looking for them?" "Please, just come with us." Quentin looked back at his crew members behind him, specifically at Carter, who responded with a small shrug. Quentin looked back forward, and after another second or two, he nodded and walked forward toward the Lormeans. The rest of the away team followed after their commander. As Quentin came close to Captain Thema, she held out her hand with its long fingers. "I am sorry, but I have to ask you to hand over your weapons." Quentin bristled at this for a second before he pulled out his phaser and flipped it around to hand it, handle first, to Thema. "Hand them over, guys," he said simply as Thema took the phaser from him. As the away team reached the party of Lormeans, each of them handed their phasers to the guards. They were quickly shown into the flyers, with Quentin being ushered into the same flyer as Thema, and inside she motioned to a seat next to her for Quentin. The flyers quickly took off through the forest, deftly weaving through the trees without touching a single one. There was no way that any of the crew members he could think of, even Lieutenant Arvik, their main helmsman, could weave through the trees this quickly and deftly. Eventually, they landed on a large landing pad in the trees. As the people disembarked, each member of the team took a moment to stop and take in their surroundings. The city they were in. Each building was made from a tree, and they watched as they saw many Lormeans traveling from tree to tree on multiple levels, with what could only be described as roads and bridges and footpaths just crisscrossing in 3 dimensions. Beyond the city, the trees closed in again to a dense forest that seemed to be mist-filled. But eventually, each crew member's eyes settled on one singular building, carved from an enormous living tree with glass walls made from opaque amber. Carter was the first to find his voice. "Is that where we're going?" he asked, pointing toward the giant tree. Thema nodded. "Yes, that is where we are heading. That is the Lormean Central Headquarters. It is the centerpiece of our entire civilization, our governmental center. It is the heart of the Lormean culture." They were quickly led through a series of wooden bridges that were made from the trees as they were traveling through, and went through tree trunks until they had reached the building they had seen from the landing pad. As they walked inside, the entire place was tinted orange from the small amount of light that penetrated the amber walls. The floors of the building were covered in a soft moss-like plant growth that was clearly the Lormean version of carpets. They were led to elevators and taken up very far, and eventually were brought into what was essentially a conference room. This room had another stunning view of the city. This time they were looking down at the entire thing. And it was very clear that the forest closed in and was currently shrouded in mist, surprisingly close to the city. Once they had a moment to look through the floor-to-ceiling walls, they refocused inside the room and saw 3 humans and a Trill, the remaining crew of the Tesla. Thema smiled at the crew. "We will leave you to catch up. Someone will be outside when you are done." And with that, she gracefully slipped out of the room, the guards who had traveled with the group exiting before her. One Lormean remained in the room, someone who had been introduced as Chief Minister Torel, who was sitting with the crew of the Tesla. When they were alone in the room, a momentary silence fell over the 2 groups until Paria broke it. "It appears to be every member of the crew left alive," she reported flatly. The crew of the Tesla got up and moved to excitedly greet the away team. One of them, Dr. Norma Grange, went so far as to hug Carter fondly before letting go. Dr. Emmett Sherman, the ranking scientist and apparent leader, given the fact that Captain Andrew Forrest did not appear to be with the group, making him the human in the grave Paria found earlier, stepped back and began to speak. "I'm sure you're wondering what happened, so I'll fill you in. While we were cataloging spatial anomalies, the Tesla was struck with an unexpected gravimetric wave that damaged the ship's warp drive, as well as other systems, including our communications. We managed to limp to the nearby organ system and tried to set the ship down, but between the damage to the ship and the electromagnetic fluctuations, it was just more than we could handle, and we crashed. Captain Forrest died attempting to patch up our warp drive and get it working again. IBAB died during the crash. After Captain Forrest died, I assumed command. The Lormeans detected our crash and arrived very shortly after. They helped us bury our dead, and since we are a civilian outfit and not beholden to the Prime Directive, we decided to join them to come back here in hopes of finding a way to contact the Federation. After they told us the problem the planet is having, we unanimously decided to help them come up with evacuation plans." Quentin chose this moment to cut in. "Problems? What problems?" Chief Minister Terrell stood up at this point. "I believe I can explain. Organ 3 is suffering from severe geological distress, and electromagnetic disturbances are wreaking havoc on our planetary communication systems. We went from a very well-connected single polity to unable to contact many cities, especially small ones on the far side of the world. Major earthquakes have become common, and our scientists estimate that the planet will break apart within 2 weeks. We don't understand the cause of these disturbances, and we've been hoping when this federation we have heard of, when you come to the rescue of these scientists, you could use your shuttlecraft to attempt to determine what is causing this crisis. It is beyond what we can hope to detect or solve. We have plans to evacuate as many people as we can to Organ 2. With our technology, we can hope to get a couple of hundred to safety in 2 weeks at breakneck speed using the entirety of our space exploration force. But with help from these scientists, and now the ship you must have in orbit, we can rescue far more. Beyond just the humanitarian relief that will cause, if only a couple of hundred Lormeans make it to Organ 2, our species will not have enough genetic diversity to last more than a few centuries at most. And we would come to an end as a species. Just as Chief Minister Terrell ended his speech, a Powerful tremor shook the building, and cracks appeared in the walls of the room. A computer hanging on one of the walls shorts out, causing a shower of sparks to momentarily fill part of the room. As the after effects of the tremor end, and everybody regains themselves, Quentin began to speak. I'm sure you can appreciate that this is quite a lot of information for us to take in. There are also many ethical issues we must weigh in on. Can I request a room that my team and I can retire to so we can discuss our options and what the best course of action is? Terrell thought for a moment. Yes, that is more than acceptable and easily arranged. I am sorry we're asking so much of you. You are only here to rescue crashed members of your government. You did not come to have the fate of an entire species thrust into your hands. We will, of course, abide by whatever decision you make. We will not attempt to force you into any course of action. Thank you so much for listening to episode 2 of Star Trek Helix. Tune in tomorrow for the next episode of the Monster Manual Backward, where we talk about awakened shrubs and awakened trees.